When I bought my home in Oak Ridge Estates, I thought I had finally made it. The neighborhood was beautiful, the house is well maintained, and the streets quiet. The HOA promised to keep everything looking perfect, which seemed reasonable at the time. Little did I know that the simple act of maintaining my lawn would nearly bankrupt me. It all started with a letter taped to my front door. Your lawn is in violation of HOA regulations. Immediate action is required. I looked outside. My lawn looked fine, green, freshly mowed, and well kept. Confused, I read further. According to the HOA, my grass was the wrong type. Apparently, Oak Ridge Estates required a specific blend of fescue grass that was in harmony with the community aesthetic. My yard, which had a mix of fescue and Bermuda grass, was deemed non-compliant. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I called the HOA office and explained that my grass was already there when I bought the house. But they didn't care. You are responsible for ensuring full compliance with HOA landscaping regulations, the woman on the phone said coldly. Failure to do so will result in escalating fines. Fine. I figured I'd reseed the lawn. I called a local landscaper who quoted me $2,000 to remove the Bermuda grass and replace it with fescue. Pricey but doable. I scheduled the job and thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, another letter arrived. Failure to comply within the given time frame has resulted in a $500 fine. I called the HOA again, explaining that I had already scheduled the reseeding. Their response? We need to see progress immediately. Apparently, hiring a professional wasn't good enough. I had to start removing the grass right away, or the fines would keep coming. Frustrated, I spent an entire weekend tearing up sections of my lawn by hand. My back ached. My hands were covered in blisters. But I had to show progress. It didn't matter. A week later, another fine. $1,000. The HOA inspector claimed I hadn't removed enough grass. At this point, I was livid. The landscapers were set to finish the job in just a few days, but the HOA was bleeding me dry before they could even start. By the time the new fescue grass was installed, I had spent over $5,000 on labor and fines. But I thought, at least it's over. My lawn was perfect now, right? Wrong again. The HOA sent another letter. Your lawn does not meet the required uniformity standards. What did that mean? It meant that because my newly planted grass wasn't the exact shade of green as my neighbor's yards, it was still in violation. I was about to find out just how deep this nightmare would go. The moment I read the words, your lawn does not meet the required uniformity standards, I knew I was trapped. My lawn had been completely reseeded at great expense, yet the HOA still wasn't satisfied. I called their office, demanding an explanation. Your grass is not uniform in color compared to adjacent properties, the woman on the phone explained, as if this was a perfectly rational reason to fine someone. You'll need to apply additional treatments to correct the inconsistency. I nearly lost it. You mean I need to make my grass more green? Correct. A lawn care specialist can assist you with the necessary chemicals and treatments. Failure to comply will result in additional fines. I hung up in disbelief. This couldn't be real. How could they force me to change the color of my grass? Reluctantly, I called my landscaper again. He sighed when I explained the situation. You're not the first person in this neighborhood with this issue, he admitted. They're ridiculous about color uniformity. His solution? A custom fertilizer and dye treatment to even out the color across my yard. The cost? $3,500. I had no choice. The HOA had already fined me another $2,000 for failure to correct non-compliance. I was bleeding money just to keep my house in line with their absurd demands. The treatments were applied, and within 2 weeks, my lawn finally matched my neighbor's yards. I held my breath, hoping that this nightmare was over. Then came the next violation notice. Excessive water usage in violation of community conservation guidelines. I had been forced to overwater my lawn to keep the HOA mandated grass alive in our hot climate. Now they were fining me for following their own rules. The fine? $1,500. I went straight to the next HOA meeting, armed with documents, photos, and receipts. I was ready to expose how they had drained me for nearly $15,000 over a lawn. I expected a fair discussion. Instead, I was met with blank stares and bureaucratic nonsense. The HOA board enforces community guidelines in the best interest of all homeowners. Greg Lawson, the board president, said dismissively, "If you're unable to comply, there are other housing options available." Translation: if you don't like it, move. I walked out of that meeting realizing one thing. This wasn't about my lawn. This was about control, and I wasn't going to let them win. The HOA had pushed me too far. What started as a simple lawn complaint had turned into a financial disaster, and their dismissive attitude at the meeting made one thing clear. They weren't going to stop. I started doing research, digging into HOA laws and homeowners' rights. I found case after case of HOAs abusing their power, forcing homeowners into financial ruin over minor infractions. Some people had even lost their homes because of unpaid fines that spiraled out of control. I wasn't about to let that happen to me. I decided to hit them where it hurt. Their own rules. I got my hands on the HOA bylaws, all 200 pages of them. Hidden deep inside the legal jargon was something interesting. Any homeowner could request a financial audit of the HOA's expenditures. And with the outrageous amount of fines being collected in the neighborhood, I had a feeling something shady was going on. So I made the request. At first, the HOA ignored me. Then after multiple emails and a certified letter, I got a one-sentence response. Financial records are unavailable due to administrative backlog. That was a lie. They were required by law to provide financial transparency, and they knew it. That's when I contacted a local investigative reporter who had covered HOA corruption before. I handed over every document I had, every fine, every unreasonable demand, and the refusal to show financial records. He was hooked. Within a week, a news crew was knocking on doors in our neighborhood, interviewing frustrated homeowners who had suffered under the HOA's rule. I wasn't alone. Dozens of neighbors came forward with their own horror stories. Fines for bird feeders, for driveway cracks, for curtains that were the wrong shade of white. Then the biggest bombshell dropped. The reporter's investigation revealed that thousands of dollars in HOA fines had been misappropriated. Money that was supposed to go toward neighborhood maintenance had instead been funneled into the personal accounts of board members, including Greg Lawson, the HOA president himself. The moment the story aired, everything changed. Homeowners who had been too afraid to speak out demanded a full audit. The city got involved. The HOA board tried to fight back, calling the investigation a smear campaign. But the damage was done. Greg Lawson and 2 other board members resigned within days. But I wasn't done yet. I had one final move to make. The HOA was about to pay me back for every penny they took. With the HOA board in turmoil and the community demanding answers, I finally had the leverage I needed. The audit was no longer optional. It was happening. And what it uncovered was even worse than I had imagined. Over $150,000 in HOA fines and dues had been misappropriated. The board had used the money for personal vacations, private home renovations, and even luxury car payments. Greg Lawson, the former HOA president, had siphoned off the most, nearly $80,000. With the evidence in hand, the homeowners filed a class action lawsuit. I wasn't the only one demanding my money back. Everyone who had been unfairly fined wanted justice. And this time the law was on our side. The city stepped in, announcing criminal charges against Greg and his closest allies. When faced with fraud and embezzlement charges, they folded. The court ordered full restitution to homeowners who had been unjustly fined, including me. Within months, I got every dollar back, every fine, every landscaping bill, and every ridiculous fee they had charged me. But the best part? The HOA was forced into a complete overhaul. The remaining board members were removed, and the new leadership eliminated over 90% of the unnecessary rules. The absurd grass regulations? Gone. The outrageous fines? Permanently capped. Homeowners now had actual power over the HOA, not the other way around. As I stood on my lawn, a lawn that was finally mine, without threat of another fine, I realized something. HOAs only win when homeowners stay silent. The moment we fought back, we took our community back. I had nearly lost everything over a patch of grass, but in the end, I won. And thanks to that fight, no homeowner in our neighborhood would ever have to go through the same nightmare again.